Listen, I want to challenge you to take 100% responsibility for your life. Now, at a conscious level, you may be thinking, I am responsible for my life. But my question to you would be, does your actions line up with the declaration that you are 100% responsible for your life? Because the truth is, most people believe that they are entitled to a certain kind of life. How do I know that? Because I was that person. Like, I used to think that I was owed something. Now, I never framed it that way, but I used to think that it's unfair for me to be such a good person and people not want to help me be great. Like, it's not fair if I ask for help and I don't get it. It's not fair for me to go through all of the things that I go through and somebody don't see me and say, hey, that's a good person. He trying to help people. He trying to do this or that. Let me help him out. I was living in a fantasy world because that's not realistic. Even in 2022, I found myself questioning God and a little salty with him. Like, Lord, why didn't you allow me to meet Dr. Myron Golden sooner in my life? Things could have been better, right? So I'm blaming all these outside things on why my life looks like it looked. But I had to come to the realization that the reason that my life looks the way it looks, good or bad, is because of me. Like, I'm the one that has been running my life. It's because of me. And I'm here to tell you, if you want to be successful at anything in your life, like if you want a better marriage, if you want a better friendship, if you want a better job, if you want a degree, it's going to depend 100% on you because you are 100% responsible for your life. And the thing is, I want you to take responsibility for your life. Now, when I say 100% responsibility, I'm talking about your health, right? Your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your money, where you live, everything. Everything that's in your life, I want you to take responsibility for it. And not just, I want you to take responsibility for it. You need to, because if you don't, I promise, well, you're probably already suffering, but you will continue to suffer without question. But man, if we're honest, the reason that it's so difficult to take that kind of responsibility for your life is because we live in a culture that promotes the idea of blaming other people, like not taking responsibility for your stuff. That's everywhere in the culture. So I could see how it would be difficult. It was difficult for me. Like, I didn't even know that I was doing that. But that does not negate the fact that you have to take 100% responsibility for your life. So there's no sense in you looking anywhere else other than your mirror, because it was you the whole time. Like, nobody told you, but it was you the whole time. So while you're blaming your mom for beating you, or blaming your dad for being absent, while you're blaming teachers because they didn't like you, or you blaming the fact that you had a child in your teenage years so you couldn't go to college and that's why you don't have a degree. You can blame whatever you want, but the reality is you are the one. You made every choice, right? You created every feeling. You are the one that thought the thoughts, created the feelings, did the actions, made the choices to put your life exactly where it is. It was you. To take 100% responsibility for your life means to give up all of your excuses, all of your victim stories. You got to give all of that up. You got to give up all of the reasons as to why things have not worked out for you other than it was me. That's the only reason you're allowed to keep. I did it. It was me. It's my life. I'm responsible for it. I did it. So when things don't turn out the way that you hoped, you got to pause and ask yourself, how did I create this? What decisions did I make to put me in this position? What could I have done differently? Right? If you're not 100% responsible for your life, then you are at the mercy of whoever. Who's going to run your life then? God's not going to run it. It's up to you. And I can hear some of you saying, man, look, I was molested or I was abandoned. These things happen to me. I get it. We cannot control what happens to us. But you need to understand that controlling what happened to you is not a requirement for you to have a better life. But what is required is for you to take 100% responsibility. See, if it was about what happened to you, the things that you've gone through, there are people all over the planet who've been through that and worse, and they've come through it, right? They're better. So if it was the circumstances, then everybody who's been molested, everybody who's been raped, everybody who's been abandoned, everybody whose dad went to prison, everybody who's been abused, all of their lives would look the same, but they don't. Why? Because some folk took responsibility for their life and then some don't. And you got to decide which side of that coin you're going to be on. Because, look, I've been on the planet long enough to understand life is going to happen. It's going to happen. You got to take responsibility for how you respond to what happens. Because the problem ain't what happened, it's how you respond to it. So check this out. I was in the garage the other day, and I was looking around, and I just got to thinking, man, I made everything in here, right? I do woodworking. I made everything in here. But then that got me to thinking about this topic that I'm sharing with you now, because there was a time, and this was after 40. I was older than 40 when I stopped blaming my parents for the way that my life looked. Now, I didn't know that I was doing that, but when I get to areas of my life where, like, I'm failing, the excuse, because it was an excuse, I didn't know it, but the excuse would come up, oh, man, ain't nobody taught me that, or I didn't know that you're supposed to do that way. Nobody told me, right? So I'm in the garage, and I'm looking at all the stuff that I've made, and the first question came to my mind, like, man, you're really good at woodworking. That wasn't the question, but statement, you're really good at woodworking. But then the question came, how'd you learn that? And then that got me to thinking about when I used to blame my parents. Here's the thing, watch this. If my life looked the way it looks, or looked back then, whichever one you want, if it was because my parents didn't teach me, like my dad didn't teach me how to handle money, my mama didn't teach me, how to treat women. They didn't teach me how to study the Bible. They didn't teach me, like my parents didn't teach me anything about life, anything meaningful that I can remember. They didn't teach me nothing. But then in processing that, I also had to process, they didn't teach me woodworking either. They didn't teach me how to be a husband. They didn't teach me how to be a therapist. They didn't teach me how to, well, I guess my mama did. She didn't teach me how to drive a car, but she put me in driver's ed. So, okay, that's good. But like all this equipment in here, my parents didn't teach me how to run this. I've built 3 computers. My parents didn't teach me that. Here's my point. If the reason that my life, and I'm speaking for you, so put yourself in my place. So I'll just do it for you. If the reason your life looks the way it looks is because of what your parents didn't teach you, if it's because of what you didn't get in childhood, then how do you explain all the stuff you do have? Where'd you learn that at? So are you saying that you couldn't have learned to communicate better? Because so when you was at home, you wasn't allowed to speak. And now as a 35-year-old adult, you don't know how to communicate. You're saying that's your parents' fault? You haven't been a child in a long time? Right? You need to take responsibility for how your life looks and what's going on with it, because if you don't, you will continue to suffer. Jim Rohn says, life only gets better when you get better. If you don't get better, I promise you, life won't get better. It just won't. When it comes to your life, you're in control of 3 things. You're in control of the thoughts you think. You're in control of the images in your head and the stories that you turn over and over, and the choices you make. And how you interact with those 3 is going to determine the experiences you experience in your life. That's it. Life happens to everybody on the planet. But why doesn't every life look the same? Because everybody don't respond the same. So you got to change how you respond to what happens by taking 100% responsibility, getting some new responses so that you can get some new outcomes. Because look, the events that happen, plus if you add the events that happen to how you respond to the events, that is going to equal the outcomes you experience. So if you want to change the outcomes, we already said we don't have control over the events, so you're going to have to change your response, right? Get better responses to the events and you'll change the outcomes. But again, I'm going to keep driving this home. It's up to you. You got to be 100% responsible for your life. That's it. That's all. You got to be 100%. Why I can't say 100%? You don't try to say. Now, I may not know a whole lot. Okay. I'm not the smartest in the world. I may not know a whole lot, but one thing I do know, if you keep doing what you've always done, I guarantee you're going to keep getting what you've always gotten. But if that's good enough for you, then hey, keep doing that. But don't put that on someone else and say, hey, my life looks this way because of something outside of me. That ain't true. That's not true. Not even kind of close. It was you the whole time. If you are going to take 100% responsibility for your life, you are going to have to stop blaming other folk or other things, and you're going to have to stop complaining. The thing about blaming and complaining, there's nobody to blame for the way your life looks but you. And then when it comes to complaining, everything you complain about, you can do something about. How do I know? Because we don't complain about stuff that we cannot change. I've never heard anybody complaining about gravity. And yet, gravity sometimes works against us. Like, I wish I could fly. I don't want to believe I could fly. I wish I could fly, but I can't. But ain't nobody complaining about that. I've never heard a human complain, but man, I can't fly, because you know that's not a possibility. So it ain't even something you complain about. You complain about the things you can actually change. But then why don't we change it? The reason is this. Because to change things, it involves risk. And you know, we gravitate to comfort. Like, you keep complaining. You complain about your marriage. You complain about your job. You complain about lack of opportunity. But the reality is this. You can change those things. Like you can get a more loving partner. Okay? You can get a better job. You can start a business and create opportunity. But again, like I say, the reason you won't do that is because you're afraid of the risk. See, to get a better partner, then you got to risk divorce and embarrassment, right? To start a business, you got to risk unemployment. See, we don't want to we don't want to risk anything. We just want to complain and keep things as we would call status quo. But you can't do that if you want to if you want to get your life to the next level. You're gonna have to take it there. It's not gonna happen automatically, right? Cream don't rise to the top in this kind of situation. You got to take it to the top. I don't know if that made sense, but I like it, so I'm gonna keep it. Listen, guys, I never said that taking 100% responsibility for your life is gonna be easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? But I'm not saying that it's easy, but I promise you, it is 100% necessary. It's necessary for you to experience what God intended for you to experience on this planet. You got to take responsibility for your life. If you can overcome you, there's nothing and no one on this planet or beyond this planet that can stop you from being great. Not even God. God can't stop you from being great. Watch this. If you make the choice to follow the principles that he's already laid out that are connected to certain promises, if you do that, he has no choice but to give you what he said he would give you, because the Bible says God is not a man that he would lie. So he can't lie. So if he already said it, if you work the principles, so you can't say, God is working against me. Nobody's working against you. And even if they are, you are the determining factor to what your life has and will look like. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's necessary. If you're going to change, you're going to have to do it, right? Now, my challenge to you is to take 100% responsibility for your life, stop blaming others, and stop complaining. But watch this. Whether you do or you don't, that's up to you. But I tell you what you can't do. You cannot say, nobody told me that it was me the whole time, because I just did.